This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks. So as we're looking at the PowerPoint that I handed out to you all, right, for Chapter 9. So we're not doing all of Chapter 9. We're pulling, I created this PowerPoint from the subject matter within Chapter 9 and added some things here too that I thought would be interesting for you all. But again, we're looking at immunity and disease, okay? And the lymphatic system is a part of that system as well as your cardiovascular system. So you'll see here also that in this PowerPoint, I've added some images and such that'll be helpful for you to get an understanding. And we've already looked at 2 videos that have given a good, kind of a generalized overview regarding the immune response and the immune system. And so those of you online, I will share those links to those videos for you all, okay? All right, very good. So let's look into the first slide here. So on this first slide, you'll see here, so there are 3 lines of defense regarding what goes on as far as protecting your body, okay? So you'll see here that there's physical barriers, the innate immunity, and the adaptive immunity. Well, physical barriers you understand that term because you can think of your skin. You can think of the different secretions that your body would create for the eyes, protecting the eyes, your oral cavity, and so on, right? So physical barriers we understand is, and the skin is a big part of that, the integumentary system. You'll see here as far as innate and adaptive, so these are more of kind of we would say a non-specific and specific. So write that down, please, in class. Innate, we would think of more of a non-specific, and the adaptive, we would think of an specific immune response. As a result of adapting, as a result of being exposed to certain things that could make you sick, we can adapt and we can create a more specific immune response. So that's important. The term antigen. Antigens are proteins. These are proteins that are presented on the outside of these different bacterium and such that could make you sick. And so we have here is these proteins are present, and there will be cells in your immune response, in your immune system, that will react to and be able to determine a response to these specific antigens. You'll see a foreign substance, body's immune response. So whether they be a virus, whether they be toxins, cancer cells, bacterium, okay? So when we think of the physical barriers, you'll see here that there are chemical barriers like those secretions I mentioned, your saliva, your tears, right? These are chemical barriers. You'll see here the linings of body cavities and tubes, right? And specifically thinking of your digestive system and such. And again, the integument, your skin. And in your integument, the skin being very important in that it doesn't have areas that are cuts that are present that could allow them for little microbes to enter into your body. Okay? So these physical barriers play a very important role. Now, this innate immunity, okay? So this innate immunity, you were born with this immunity, okay? And what happens also is that your interaction with your mother has allowed for your immune system to get a boost from the beginning. Now, some of you weren't breastfed, right, or having breast milk and such, but if you were, really the beginning part of that milk, it's called the colostrum. How many of you have heard that term colostrum? Anybody at all? Yeah, it's the first milk. And this first milk is very important because it has a lot of immune cells and such that are going to be sent to the baby to help protect the child once it's born, okay? So very important. You'll see here that this innate immunity, so present preset responses to infection from birth, carried out by white blood cells and proteins. So these specific proteins, there are terms called complement, which is a bunch of different proteins that will work together to destroy cells. And it's called the non-specific immune response, like I said to you before there. Okay? It doesn't have a memory per se. Like when we think of the specific immune response, you come in contact with a bacterium, a virus, fungi, whatever it may be, and your body has a memory of it so that when it encounters it another time, it'll create a faster, stronger immune response. Don't think that in regards of innate immunity. Okay? You're born with this immune response. Again, also from the placenta, mom is sending, oxygen as well as the immune response to baby. Okay, so it's really important. And one other thing, when baby passes through the canal, the birth canal, the baby will also receive specific types of microbes that are healthy for mom that will now be on the baby. You understand that? That's very important. So this can be an issue, and this is turning into something that research is being done to see, well, what about children that are born cesarean section, C-section, right? They're not passing through the birth canal. So they have different types of microbes. Understand, folks, that we all have microbes on us, in us, around us, right? Most of them don't make us sick, but a small percentage do, okay? But they help us to be healthy, to be honest. Without healthy microbes living on us and in us, so your skin covered in good bacteria. That's what you need to think of. So bacteria is not bad per se, but the ones that make you sick, yeah, that's not so fun. The adaptive or specific immune response is important. And you'll see here it's triggered by the innate immune response. So the innate immunity helps to activate the adaptive specific immune response. All right? So it's very important that your immune system is not just different immune systems present within your body. It's one immune system that has different aspects to it. Just like the nervous system has different areas, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, it's really all one nervous system with different branches, okay, working together. So the adaptive and the innate or the non-specific immune response work together. You'll see here that changes over the lifetime because that would make sense, would it not? Because you have the ability to adapt, you have the ability to experience different pathogens that you might be coming in contact with, different microbes and such. So that's important for you to remember. You'll see here that white blood cells, lots of them, they are involved in your immune response. When a patient has a disease or disorder like leukemia, is anybody choosing leukemia at all? No? Okay. But leukemia, that can be an issue with large, higher levels of white blood cells, but they're not working in a way that we would want them to work, like in this normal immune response. And you'll see here that, look at this, they take a while to develop this specific immune response, and these memory B and T lymphocytes have the ability to then live long and have this memory of this encounter with these cells that can make you sick, these microbes that can make you sick. This next slide is good because it just gives you a little bit more of an idea regarding what goes on with these innate and specific. And you'll see here, the innate, yes, it's an immediate immune response. The adaptive takes a little while to develop, but it will have a long-term effect. There will be memory cells produced from this encounter. Whereas with the innate, no, there's not memory cells. It's just specific types can react and non-specific. Here's an example of, and I just showed you this earlier, but these are examples of white blood cells that are present within the body and part of the immune response. Okay, and that macrophage comes from a monocyte, which is a special type of white blood cell that will adapt and change and become this macrophage that's kind of like the cleanup crew of the human body. So it's really important. Here you're seeing other magnifications of bacterium and such that can make us sick and immune response taking place. Here we have, and I believe what we'll do is we'll end with this slide, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll move on. You'll see here that these specific type of immune cells, the white blood cells, neutrophils, the eosinophils, the basophils, and the lymphocytes. And the monocytes are not listed here, but they're very much like the dendritic cell. They become that macrophage. They have different types of action and why they might be more present depending upon what you're coming in contact with. So in the case of neutrophils, write this down, bacteria. The neutrophils really are important as far as bacterial infection and fighting bacteria, neutrophils. They're like, you could consider them and the monocytes, the macrophages, sorry, as like first responders. So the neutrophils, the macrophages, they're your first responders. The eosinophils, they're red in their cytoplasm of their cells, hence the term eosin, that's a representative of red. So they target parasites. So this phagocyte or phagocytosis, this is cell eating. It's where the cell, kind of like a Pac-Man. You ever heard of Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man? You know, it's got that, just like this eating machine. Well, that's what neutrophils, that's what macrophages, they have this phagocytic activity. And you'll see here that the eosinophils, they're going to target the parasites. So think nematodes, think worms and such. One example of a parasite. Basophils have special chemicals that will release inflammatory substances, histamine, right? So why would this be a good thing? Well, the inflammatory response short term is not a bad thing, and it can help fight the different microbes that you might be coming in contact with. The dendritic cells, they really help to alert your specific immune response of what's going on and activate it. And they can present with, on their plasma membrane outside of their cells, those dendritic cells, parts of, pieces of whatever microbe is present within your body that could possibly make you sick. The B and T lymphocytes we talked about, those B and T cells, which are lymphocytes. The B cells can produce cells that will produce antibodies, and the T cells will produce these specific types of cells that will directly attack and destroy microbes, bacteria, virus infected cells, cancer cells. So specific immune response, those B and T lymphocytes, as well as both of them will have a memory, B and T lymphocytes memory, and as well as the T cells will be able to either enhance the immune response or suppress the immune response, depending upon what's going on. All right, folks, so I'm going to stop recording for a moment here. We're going to take a break.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we're going to finish up this chapter, folks. So we're looking at the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system works in conjunction with the cardiovascular system in order to provide this immune response that we've been talking about. Okay, you'll see here that picks up fluid loss from the capillaries, these little very tiny blood vessels, returns it to the bloodstream to the right side of the heart. But in the meantime, these lymphatic capillaries, these lymphatic vessels, contain the liquid portion of the blood, the plasma that's leaked out of those capillaries. Lymph is that material, that liquid that's present within those lymphatic capillaries, those lymphatic vessels. Okay, so know this, that you have, so look over here, folks, at our arm. Close up their arm. And what we're seeing here is that, okay, so we've got these red and blue vessels, right? You see them? And that's the cardiovascular system, right? Directly connected to the heart. The heart is a pump, two pumps, right? The right side of the heart pumping to the lungs, left side of the heart pumping to systemic circulation. What you're not seeing here is the lymphatic capillaries that are also present, the lymphatic vessels that are also present, that carry this special liquid called lymph that is not connected to the pump, right? Yet it's still moving throughout your body, okay? And know that eventually, as it gets to that right side of your heart, it's going to mix in with the blood, okay? So lymph is very important. Lymph is the tissue fluid that is moved into those lymphatic Now this image right here just shows you as far as this lymphatic system, this additional system that's present of vessels within the human body, in addition to the cardiovascular system. So you're looking at all these green structures, these green vessels, and you're looking also at the green dots. Those dots that are present are the lymph nodes. You probably went to the doctor and they've palpated, they've touched your neck or underneath your armpit and said, hey, you've got some swollen nodes, right? You're fighting some type of infection. And that's because these nodes interact with the different types of microbes that could make you sick. And that's their response. That's their job. You'll see here we have the thymus gland, where those T cells will become mature and be able to fight off infection specifically. And you'll see the spleen. Now the spleen does not filter lymph, but it filters blood. So it's connected to the cardiovascular system, and it works to also provide this immune response. So you've got these different nodes, you've got the bone marrow producing those mature B cells that are going to produce those antibodies. So let's look at a cell here. So take a look at this cell. So those of you online, you can see this cell. Okay, think about it as I'm talking about it. So we have this cell, and the plasma membrane is the outer portion of the cell. Okay, and on the plasma membrane, there are going to be different antibodies. They're different proteins that are coming off of this cell that allow for your body's immune system to recognize whether it's self or non-self. Okay, and so what you need to then keep in mind is that the antigens that are present on your cells, as well as on the bacteria, as well as on cancer cells that are your mutated own body cells, right? It's very important so that we can differentiate between cells that are part of your body or cells that are not a part of your body, and we need to mount an immune response. So that's important. But remember, again, the antibodies can attach to the plasma membrane, the outer portion of whatever cell is going on in your body that can make you sick, right? Bacterium, virus infected cell, cancer cell, that would be a cell of your body that's mutated, and they can prevent it from doing its job, the cell, those antibodies. So they don't directly kill the cell, but they mark it for destruction. So it's pretty much like putting a little sign on the cell saying, hey, this cell's no good, immune system, macrophages, dendritic cells, destroy that cell. Natural killer cells destroy that cell. And so that's the role of those antibodies. Okay. Here you can see a lymph node. So I want you to notate this and write this down. It's already in the notes, but you need to write it again. So lymph nodes filter lymph. The spleen filters blood. The lymph nodes filter lymph. The spleen filters blood. And what you'll see here, folks, in this image on the PowerPoint, is that these lymph nodes are not just a hollow cavity and that's it. There are different structures present within that allow for lymph to move through and to be exposed to the different types of cells that are present within your immune system. Also, look at this here, and you'll see that there are more vessels going into the lymph node than there are leaving the lymph node. So more vessels are bringing lymph to the node than allowing it to leave the node. So that slows down the movement of the lymph. Also, what are these little things right here? They're valves. They're valves. So they only allow for movement of lymph in one direction. Just like the veins have valves present that only move blood in one direction, right? Prevent backflow. Well, this also prevents backflow of the lymph in the lymphatic system, in those vessels. So, next slide. Functions in drainage, delivery, and disposal, right? That's why I highlighted there. That's very important to realize that what's going on is that this liquid that's present within the lymphatic system in those lymph vessels, right? It's looking for, it's going to help to drain channels, collect water and solutes that have leaked out of the blood. It's going to pick up fats. It's going to deliver them back to the bloodstream. It's going to also transport for material, cellular debris. Cellular debris you can think of as cells that are no longer doing their job. So we need to clean up crew. We need to get rid of them and recycle the material that they're made up of. And again, you're just seeing this image here is just reinforcing as far as the components of the lymphatic system as well as the lymph node. So let's look at this next slide. And you'll see here it says the nodes located at intervals along the lymph vessels, right? So they're a part of this lymphatic system. But again, remember, it's not directly connected to a pump. So we're not going to be pumping lymph in the body. What does allow for this movement? The contraction of your skeletal muscles. That allows for movement of lymph. So write that down, please. So the contraction of skeletal muscles allows for the movement of lymph in this lymphatic system. Right? And again, there are these valves present to allow for only one-way flow. Valves are present to allow for one-way flow. Okay? So the nodes filter the lymph. The spleen, now that's connected directly to the cardiovascular system. And what will happen also in the spleen is we'll recycle old red blood cells. That's important. And it'll also act as a reservoir for blood cells and for blood itself. The thymus gland, again, this is where the T cells will multiply, they'll mature, they'll become specialized into those different types of special important T cells, allowing for a specific immune response. So let's look at this next image. It's pretty cool. And what you're seeing here, folks, is that we have blood vessels with red blood cells present within. And then you'll see that there are the different types of white blood cells present. So here's that macrophage, really involved in cell eating, phagocytosis. Write that term down. Phagocytosis, cell eating. Right? We're taking this information, these bacteria. So the little green little rods, we call them, the bacilli, those bacterium, are covered in antibodies. Do you see that? They're covered in the antibodies. Actually, where the purple dot, sorry, not the antibodies, the special chemicals called complement. That's the protein. Apologize, made a mistake there. And they're then allowed for that also helps to mark them for destruction by the immune system. This image here shows you as far as the bone marrow, B cells, the T cells, the thymus gland, and what goes on as far as that. You'll see at the very bottom, I want you to highlight this and write this down, put it in your notes. Antibody-mediated immune response, cell-mediated immune response. So those antibodies are very important and crucial for what's taking place as far as marking different types of organisms for destruction. And the cell-mediated, there we're going to have an actual activation of the immune system or a suppression of the immune system, and also directly destroying microbes, bacterium, virus-infected cells, cancer-infected cells by those killer cells, the T lymphocytes. So now here's something that'll give you a little bit more information regarding immunity and such. And we're talking about vaccines. And so many of us have experienced the COVID vaccine, but there's flu vaccines, there's different, all kinds of, for tetanus, I mean, there are many different types of vaccines. So what does this represent and what does it mean? How does it work, right? So you'll see here that vaccination stimulates the immune response of your body. The vaccines contain an antigen, a protein, right? That'll be related to what we're trying to fight. The first injection confers this active immune response, this active immunity. Later booster shots cause more effector cells and memory cells to form. So that again, booster shots will just strengthen your immune response to whatever it is that we're trying to create this vaccine for. And the booster shots again provide more of a long-lasting immune response. There's more memory cells created and just boosting that immune response. And you'll see here also that the different virus, bacterium that can make you sick, right? So they're weakened they're either dead or they're weakened, very severely weakened in the vaccine so as to allow for you to have an immune response once you receive that vaccine, but not make you sick, okay? Now this next image here is just showing you as far as an active immune response and a passive immune response. So let's look at the passive first. So with the passive immunity, you're going to see mom. So whether it's coming from the placenta or coming from the breast milk, this is a way that the baby is receiving immune cells, an immune system that is already mature, and it's already giving the baby this boost, this protection. How about artificial passive? Well, if you've ever had a situation where you've been exposed to a rabid bat or a rabid creature, like a raccoon, okay, possibly been bitten, or how about bitten by a snake that's venomous? What can happen is that you can receive plasma that has a specific immune response already going on that you can receive in your body, and it can fight very quickly instead of taking a week to get strong. Okay, so this can happen so that it can prevent you from getting sick right away. So this is like right away it can fight whatever it is that you're dealing with, rabies, whatever it may be, tetanus, whatever it is. Like this, you can receive that antivenom right away. Vaccination, right, is a way where you can artificially be stimulated to create this immune response. And so it's working with your immune system, but it's creating an immune response. That's the vaccine. And how about when we say natural? That just means that you've been exposed to it, you've been encountered it someplace, exposed to it, received the infection, right? You had the infection, and then you recuperated from it. That's your natural immune response, okay? So you need to know these four and what they represent, okay? All right, let's move on here in just a moment. Only a few slides to go, folks. So you'll see here allergies, right? So many of us suffer from some type of allergy, whether it's minor or major allergic response that you can happen. A major allergic response can possibly lead to death, right? Anaphylactic shock, we could say. So if you're allergic to bee venom or any type of insect venom, that could be a problem, right? That you've been stung by a bee or stung by many bees, that can be an issue. Or how about different types of pollen that's in the air, or dust particles, or there's many different things that you can be allergic to. Different types of foods, right? Again, provoking this immune response by your body. So pollen, foods, drugs, dust mites, right? Insect venom, cosmetics, these can all, even how about different types of gloves, like those surgical type gloves, right? Some of them can be, people can be allergic to the specific type of material that they're made out of. You'll see here that these IgE, these are specific types of antibodies that are activated that will work with the immune response. Okay. I'm going to show you, let's see, yeah, here we go. I'm going to go back in just a moment, but I want to show you this. So here we have, and you saw this in the video, folks, that it shows you the different types of structures for antibodies on the right-hand side. So these different types of structures for an antibody. This is primarily what you're used to seeing maybe when you think of an antibody, but there are other structures that are a little bit bigger. And depending upon what you come in contact with, IgA are found in the secretions, so mucus, saliva, tears, breast milk. IgD, they'll be an activating part of the immune system. The IgE for parasites, allergic reactions. The IgG, this one right here, that one is very important because that one is produced in the greatest amounts, and it's really able to fight a lot of different types of infections and such. And then the IgM, not very many of these as much as the others, and it's larger. Let's go back. All right, so we talked about the cell-mediated response, that's the T lymphocytes. So skin allergic reactions, right? So you can have a reaction where you start to itch, where you start getting bumps and such, and hives as a result of an interaction with something that's making you allergic. You'll see here as far as food stuff like shellfish, eggs, wheat. How about peanuts? These are very common allergens. That term anaphylactic shock, that's that severe allergic reaction that can occur. This can lead to death, folks, if not taken care of. So really, does anybody know of anybody that maybe a family member or somebody, a friend that might have these, where you have to carry an EpiPen? Anybody, epinephrine? This is like adrenaline. It's a very important aspect of trying to help with preventing this anaphylactic shock from going any further. Very scary stuff. Right. You'll see here, as far as autoimmune disorders are concerned, so this is when your body is actually creating an immune response to your own body cells. Very bad, okay? So rheumatoid arthritis is one. Type 1 diabetes, where it's attacking what's going on as far as with production of insulin and those cells that produce it in the pancreas. The term, those are just some examples of, there are many types of. How about HIV, which can lead to AIDS, right? This is an issue where we have an attacking of these helper T cells. So the HIV virus will infect these helper T cells and destroy them and really affect your specific immune response, which is terrible. Immunodeficiency, this is a term that we use for someone whose immune system is compromised and not functioning like it properly should, and creating the immune response that it needs to create for you. Excuse me. Last two slides here. So the terms, and specifically because of what we've been dealing with, so epidemic and pandemic. So an epidemic, disease rate increases to a level above what experience would predict. starts spreading and going crazy and wild throughout the population, the pandemic, the epidemic will break out at different places around the world at the same time. So it's a global event, a pandemic. So you're seeing here, pandemic, something more global affecting the whole country. In the red there with the white and yellow writing, it's global pandemic. Affecting a whole country or a whole world, relates to the disease being widely spread geographically. Okay, so interesting here. So they'll say that the flu would be more of an epidemic. Okay, flu. So an epidemic, problem that grew out of control. When talking about medicine, it's an occurrence of an illness actively spreading in a community or at a particular time. Epidemic. So flu, pandemic, worldwide. Okay, so just giving you a little bit of insight regarding the immune system and how it functions, folks. I hope this is interesting and challenging for you. I hope that, like, as we look at and determine what it is that we're going to do for our projects as far as our paper is concerned, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail next class and talk to you a little bit more about the rubric that I'm redoing the rubric for you as far as the points and such that you'll receive for doing that. We'll go over that on Thursday. All right, folks, very good. So stop recording.